Ever since my controversial video, Top 5 Reasons Why I'm Hated, a lot of people wanted to know my thoughts of a possible call for segregation returning to America. Well, let's just get this out of the way. I'm a conservative, or racist, and a person that favors segregation. Why is that? Because the race wars in America are intensifying thanks to the government, the media, and all races. Black people with Black Lives Matter, Mexicans over the border issue, and Asians claiming to be oppressed despite having more freedoms here in America than they would in places like China, Vietnam, or Japan. From 1896 to 1957, segregation in America was the most productive period for America. All races cared for their community. Was it frustrating for some races to mingle? Yes, but that was considered frowned upon. Say what you will about the media trying to promote an integrated community back in the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s, but people will agree that segregation was a much better time in American history. But to understand the segregation era in America, we have to go back to the beginning. In 1892, a black man named Homer Plessy was arrested for disturbing the peace and failing to sit in a Jim Crow-designated train car. He was brought before a criminal court judge, subsequently taking his case all the way to the United States Supreme Court in 1896. The court ruled in favor of segregation, a term that means separate yet equal. This incident did not conflict with the 13th and 14th Amendments of the United States Constitution. If you read the amendments, it states as follows. 13th Amendment says that involuntary servitude should not exist in America unless you commit a crime. That means if you get incarcerated, you have no rights. So that amendment guaranteed the rights for minorities. 14th Amendment states that people including black slaves that were born in America are granted citizenship. This means that black people are free and legal citizens of this country. Therefore, Supreme Court justices recognized segregation as a constitutional law, and rightfully so. Nonetheless, black people were self-reliant, better educated, believe it or not, and carried themselves well. Examples? A lot of black men owned local businesses in their communities during the segregation era, retail shops, diners, etc. Then there were black people that were college-educated. Booker T. Washington, a man that grew up as a slave kid, went to college in Tuskegee, Alabama, and became an author. W.E.B. Du Bois, another man that went to college to become an author. Finally, George Washington Carver, a man that became a professor who was immortalized for using techniques to prevent soil depletion in America at the time. You think that segregation stopped these three gentlemen from making something of their lives? No. Then there were black people that became doctors in the segregation era. Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, a surgeon who pioneered heart surgery, trained generations of black people to become doctors. Dr. Charles Drew, a pioneer in preserving blood for donations. Contrarily to what history books and schools have told you, Dr. Charles Drew didn't die because he was denied a transfusion following a car wreck. According to a passenger, the impact of the wreck was too much for Dr. Drew to handle. These people made an impact on American history during the segregation period. These people made black lives better. Mainstream media and the government want to bury history to make black people think that they were oppressed before America integrated in 1957. So do you want to tell me once again why segregation was a terrible time in American history? Every race, not just black people, were running businesses, picking cotton, building houses for their communities. When segregation began to come to an end in 1954 after Brown versus the Board of Education, both white and black people were disgruntled. This would inevitably lead to the first Civil Rights Act of 1957. However, this was not the Civil Rights Act that drew incredible ire. It was the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Many government officials were against the bill, but the most controversial opinion came from the mind of Republican Senator Barry Goldwater of Arizona. What made this worse was that Goldwater was running against Lyndon B. Johnson. A lot of black people were angry, calling Barry Goldwater racist. Black Republicans like Jackie Robinson and Dr. Martin Luther King voted for Lyndon B. Johnson. The irony was that Goldwater actually served black people in Arizona while Johnson was the actual racist. Listen to this phone call from LBJ.
Say, well, you can't have a poll tax. They can say you can't have a gas tax or a cigarette tax or anything else. Federal government's telling the states pretty tough what their business is. Now, you can say that they can't discriminate, but I've got to prove that it discriminates, and I can't prove it in Texas. There are more niggers voting there now than white folks. There are more of them buying poll taxes now than white folks. Higher percentage of them. And I can't show that the literacy test that discriminate against because they haven't got any. They got no test at all. Just by God, anybody that can get up and pay $1.06 can vote.
Once again, the irony was that Senator Barry Goldwater actually did more for black people in Arizona than LBJ could prior to his presidency. The reason why Senator Goldwater rejected the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was because of Title VII. If you read at least the abstract of this controversial act, it gave the power to the federal government to punish people in general for rejecting people regardless of their reputation in favor of gender and race. This would subsequently lead to minority-owned businesses to shut down, causing tension in their own community. Basically, this act was to help serve corporate America rather than help communities thrive. The government started the race wars with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Forced integration since then has led to numerous riots, causing a population shift in Detroit, Michigan. That would ultimately destroy the city that once thrived on the automobile industry. Sure, television tried to downplay racism well with the Jeffersons regarding the Willis family. If you don't know, the characters of Tom and Helen Willis were the first interracial couple in television history. This drew the ire of both white and black people. Integration did not do anything for America socially, it just caused a tremendous amount of paranoia. People can't sleep with their doors unlocked or the windows open anymore. Kids can't play outside freely anymore either because of sick punks or people that look like they will open fire at any moment. Racist groups like the Black Panthers or the Ku Klux Klan knew how serious the racial tensions were going to be thanks to the government pushing equal opportunity down their throats. Today, we have a lot of racist groups. The alt-right, Black Lives Matter, the Ku Klux Klan, Antifa, the list goes on. And for those white people that had children with black people, their kids get mocked the most. Whoever thought that these people should breed should have realized the consequences of having mulatto kids. Those poor mulattoes are more likely to commit suicide since both white people and black people mock the living crap out of them. So what if segregation officially returned to America? Would the mulattoes have the right to see their white relatives, or would they have to live with their black relatives? The mulattoes would never get a break even if segregation were to return. I can say the same for white people having children with Hispanics. Those kids are going to get mocked too. It's better to preserve your race than to mix. Remember that the Europeans face a threat in the form of refugees. Remember what the white people in Africa face. Now, I will address racism in Europe and Africa, but I'm focusing on America now. Bottom line, we need segregation. We need to encourage black people to focus on improving their community without mocking the white community. We need to encourage Hispanics to focus on improving their community without mocking the white community. White people shouldn't associate themselves with black people. White people shouldn't associate themselves with Hispanics. It's that simple. Going back to segregation will encourage people to be productive again. I'm tired of people rioting on the streets. If black people want nothing to do with other races, just segregate. Everyone wins in the end. That's all I'm going to say from here.